You're listening to Engaging Early Learners. I'm Rachel Glassman, special education teacher and resource creator. This podcast is your go-to for classroom strategies and teaching support that you can actually use. Whether you're on your way to work or heading home, I'm so glad you're here. Let's dive in. Hi guys, and welcome back. Today we are going to switch it up a little bit, and we are going to do a little bit of a story time episode. I have been doing a lot of talking at you and giving you tips and tricks and strategies for the classroom, but I'm going to take a pause from that for a little bit and do some story time. I think it's important for you guys as my audience to understand my teaching journey, where I've been, what I'm doing right now, and just all of the in between to help you best understand my thoughts and where my strategies and my ideas come from. So today is going to be a little bit of a story time. Now, I'll be very honest with you, as a very type A planner type person, I did not plan this episode. I have been thinking about it for a while and I attempted to plan it out, but I have so many ideas running through my head and I'm a little scatterbrained about it that I just figured, let me press record and let's see what happens. So let's see what happens. I'm also coming off of a week of being sick, so let's see how this goes. I do want to start from like the very beginning of my teaching journey and bring you all the way to now. This might be a little bit longer of an episode, and like I said, it might be a little scatterbrained. I figured I could always revisit any of these topics I touch on today or any of the parts of my journey that you guys have a lot of questions on or that I want to expand on. But I figured today will just be a dump of my story. So let's get into it. Let's start at the very, very beginning when I was little and I wanted to be a teacher. And anyone in my family listening to this knows when I was little as 5, I wanted to be a teacher. I was the kid in my basement wanting like teacher books and a whiteboard, and I wanted to play school in my basement with my cousins, with my sisters, and if they said no, I was so upset. They used to call me Bossy Boss because I was bossy and I wanted them to sit down and listen to me so I could play school with them. So that's when it all started. When I was little, I don't know what it was. I just felt that in me that I wanted to be a teacher. And then very quickly after that, I decided that I wanted to do special education. I always had students in my classes, like as a student, that had special needs, or I was in a co-teaching room, so there were 2 teachers in the room because there were students with special needs in my classes, and I'd always gravitate towards those peers and want to help them. In my elementary school, we had a program where general education students used to be able to help the special education students in their classrooms during certain times of the day. I did that as little as like 4th grade. I think I did that. So I always gravitated towards special education and wanting to do that for my future career. And then, of course, that's what I went to school for. I went to Westchester University. They had a great teaching program, so that's why I wanted to go there. Also, I loved it there. After graduation and like leading up to graduation, all I wanted was to have a job. I was like so over it. I was like done with college. I was like, I want to be a teacher. I want to be in the classroom. I want to be doing this. And I'm sure a lot of you can relate. Kind of like when you're also done with high school, you're like, I just want to go to college. When I was done at the end of college, although it was great and wonderful, I wanted to get home, I wanted to apply for jobs, and I wanted to get a teaching job. So right after graduation, I was just so ready. I was applying everywhere. And the dream, at that time was to work in my hometown. I grew up going to the same school district like my whole childhood. My mom and I still lived there. Like I still lived with my mom when I got home from college. So to like work in that school where I grew up, and I thought it was like such a great district, to be able to work there was like the dream. So when there was an opening in my hometown for a teaching position, I immediately applied and interviewed. Now, mind you, it was for a preschool special education position. One thing I always joked and said that I would not teach was preschool. I, at the time, these were my thoughts at the time, but I wanted to teach. Like, I wanted to be in front of a classroom and teach and have students that were responding to me and have that like back and forth that you picture when you picture like being a teacher. And I thought that preschool was not like that. I thought that preschool would be like babysitting, like daycare, etc. So when I applied, I really applied because it was in my hometown, but I didn't really love the idea that it was preschool. But as I interviewed and found out more about it, I was like, okay, it's preschool special education. I wanted to do special education. Hearing more about the position, I was like, okay. And honestly, I think at the time, how old was I? Like 22. I think that my 22-year-old brain was like, whatever. It's a step in the door into the district that I want to be in. And, you know, people always tell you that, right? Like at least it's a foot in the door. So I think for me, it was that foot in the door. And if I stayed in that preschool classroom, great. If not, whatever. At least I'm in that town. I'm working in that district. And to me, at that time, that's all that mattered. So I accepted the job pretty quickly. I remember the day. It was very exciting. Signing the contract, getting my salary, although it was, you know, we get paid nothing. It was nothing, but it was all just very, very exciting. Although it was not exactly the position I wanted, nothing mattered. Looking back at my experience doing preschool special education, and I've said this, I think, in a past episode, it was the best thing for me. Like what I learned in that classroom, that type of classroom, having to be so flexible, having to accommodate and modify for each individual student, having to manage and work with teaching assistants, having to kind of make a lot of materials for my students because the curriculum we were given was for a general education population. We were given the creative curriculum and we taught in a self-contained preschool classroom. We really had to accommodate and modify so much. And, you know, that's where my teaching, that's where my Teachers Pay Teachers store came to life because I was creating so much at the time that I ended up just selling it. But anyway, back to my teaching story. So I'm in this preschool special education classroom. I am working my booty off, teaching, working long hours, preschool and like the young kids. It's exhausting. I said this in a past episode, but I would go in at 6:30. Sometimes I would not leave until 7 p.m. It was long days. I worked way too hard. I drained myself. And I put my all into everything. My classroom was perfection. Everything was perfection. I started my Instagram during my like first year of teaching. So those years, like I'm trying to show off what I'm doing. I'm trying to be this perfect example on Instagram of what my room looks like, what we're doing. I was constantly trying to get on in story about the next thing I'm doing. I was up late making resources, not only for my students, but now for my audience, because I was now sharing on Instagram and people wanted things and people were making suggestions. So I was making resources. So those first 3 years, I was tired, but I just kept pushing through. And I think within my like third year, I knew that I wasn't going to be able to do it for a fourth year. I think I knew at the beginning that wouldn't be realistic for me. And as much as I don't like change, I think I also like thrive off of a challenge and being challenged and not being stagnant. And I think that I began to feel stagnant in the preschool special education role. I felt like I had mastered it. I had done everything that is needed and necessary for that role, but also that like I could want to do in that role, if that makes any sense. So in the beginning of that year, I started to talk to my principal about like what could possibly be next steps for me. And then in March of that year, COVID hit. So we had already discussed kind of like what could the possibilities be for me because I did not want to leave my school. At the time, I had only worked there for 3 years, really like 2.5. I loved it there. I loved my principal. I loved my coworkers. I loved the environment there. I loved the families. I had formed relationships. I did not want to leave that school. And at my school, there were only so many options for me to move around. There were not all different types of classes for me to have like a choice, as if we even like get a choice. But my principal was like, I really think you should be a co-teacher. And again, at the time, there were not many options, but he was like, I think you being a co-teacher, where you are the special education teacher in the classroom and you work with a general education teacher, I think that would be best for you. You are very much a type A, do it how I want to do it type person. And I think this is him. He was like, for you, I think having to work with someone else in your classroom and having to work as a team would be really good for you. He was basically telling me that I needed to learn how to be a team player. And at the time, I was getting my admin certs. I was working very closely with him, getting all my mentorship hours, and he was getting to know me really well as a teacher, as a future admin, as a person. And he was like, Rachel, you could use this. Like, you really could use having to compromise with someone and maybe do something that you're not so comfortable doing. And it was definitely a hard pill to swallow because I wanted to have my own classroom. I wanted to do things the way I wanted to do them. But I also understood and appreciated his opinion and his thoughts. And I could see where co-teaching could be good for me. I'm going to pause for a second and explain co-teaching because whenever I talk about co-teaching on Instagram, I always get questions. They do not have co-teaching everywhere. I've learned that. In this district where I worked, and actually my two other districts since, we have all had co-teaching. Co-teaching is where a special education teacher and a general education teacher teach in the same classroom all day. It's not push in or pull out. It is in that classroom all day. It's basically inclusion. So there's a full class of students, like 20 whatever kids, 2 teachers all day. And the reason that special education teacher is in that classroom is because there's students with IEPs in that room that are in that room all day. So going back to what my principal was saying, COVID had hit. We were like working virtually. I remember my principal and I were like delivering lunches and breakfasts every morning on a bus with masks on because I was still trying to get those mentorship hours. So we were spending a lot of time together and really talking about the pros and cons of switching my role and co-teaching. And I really trusted him and agreed that that would be what was best for me, to co-teach and to do something out of my comfort zone, something that I didn't necessarily want to do with like my full being, but I knew that it would be what was best for me in the long run, to be a good admin, to be a better teacher. That's what would be best. So I decided, and it was like March, April, whenever it was, I was going to leave preschool special education. I was going to co-teach. I got to stay at my school, and it was going to be second grade co-teaching. So coming back from COVID, I mean, we were still like pretty deep in COVID times, but I was a second grade teacher now, second grade co-teacher. I emptied out my preschool special education classroom, which had all the things in it. I mean, I had built that classroom from the bottom up, brought it all home to my mom's basement, and then I had my second grade classroom. Now, because it was deep COVID times, I could not like make it the way I wanted. I was able to make a few changes. Also, I was entering someone else's classroom. The general education teacher in that classroom had taught in there on her own for years. So she had a lot of her own stuff, and now I was kind of coming into her space, which was also really hard for me to try to find that like compromise of I want things done a certain way. She had been doing things her certain way for a very long time. So it was hard for us to kind of mesh together. And I think that over the course of the 4 years we worked together, I think that that was hard for us to do. That was a big lesson for me in compromise, in communication, in working with other people. Those 4 years were definitely like a test of all of those things. So then I became a second grade co-teacher. I did second grade co-teaching for 4 years. Like I said, learned a lot. Co-teaching is not easy. I have said before, it is like a marriage. It is like an arranged marriage where you get your teaching partner assigned to you, and that is what you have to live with, and you have to live with them physically in a space. You have 20 something children that you have to make decisions for together. It is no easy feat, and I give big props to co-teachers, especially if you and your co-teacher are trying to find that groove. And it's not easy. It is not easy to co-teach, period. I loved second grade. I think second grade is like a sweet spot. I think, by then a lot of them know how to read well. You're not necessarily in a testing grade yet. At least here in New Jersey, you don't state test until third grade. So I think second grade is such a beautiful sweet spot. The kids still adore you. You are like the best thing ever to them. They love being at school, but they also have this like independence where you don't have to be on top of them. Like coming from preschool, I felt like I had to be very on them. And in second grade, I was able to give an assignment and watch them just go. And I think that I brought so much of what I learned as a teacher in my preschool special education experience into the second grade classroom, which made me a better second grade teacher. But then teaching second grade, I learned so many new things as well. How to teach my kids independence, how to teach them how to help themselves, ask three before me, those things, that all came to life in my second grade classroom. A waiting room, waiting your turn to be helped when we would do writing, like all of these different things I learned from teaching second grade, and I really, really loved it. So shout out to second grade teachers. I loved teaching second grade. So now I'm in second grade. I'm doing co-teaching, and I'm liking it, but I think, again, I began to feel stagnant again. I began to feel like, okay, I've mastered this. I've done this to the best of my ability. I've worked, as well as I could with my co-teaching pair. We've done the best we could. What is next? Kind of like, what is that next challenge for me? And it's so interesting because, like I said before, I don't like change. I am not the type of person to like be jumping around, but at the same time, I think in teaching, I love a good challenge. And I don't ever want to feel like I'm just going through the motions. I want to feel, I can't help but say challenged again. I want to feel challenged. I want to like figure out how to do the next best thing for my kids, for me as a teacher. I don't know. So I just began to feel that way again. And it was kind of like more of an internal battle. I was not really talking to my principal much about it. I was just trying to figure out what I should do next. And on my birthday, actually, that year, I found out that I was going to be switching co-teachers, still in second grade, but switching co-teachers. And I think when my principal and my supervisor told me that, there was just something in the back of my head telling me like, no, like that's not my next step. That's not what I want to do. I do definitely want a shakeup, but I don't think I want to just stay in the same grade co-teaching. Like I felt like that was not enough of a shift for me. And I walked out of that meeting literally with a birthday crown on my head. Like it was my birthday. That's when they happened to be doing those meetings to tell you what you're doing for next year. And I walked out of that meeting and I came back to my room and I said to my friends, I'm resigning. There was just something in me, and I had never thought like that. I had never pictured myself leaving this district. As much as I knew to be a better teacher, to be a better admin, I'm going to need other experiences. But again, I don't like change. So I never thought I was going to leave that district. That was my dream district. All of my friends now are here. I'd been working there for 7 years. I became part of the community. I was so involved. I was doing so many things at that school. I had started so many things and initiatives at that school. I had, been running the talent show, just all different things. And I was like, I'm actually thinking about leaving. And the fact that I think it even entered my brain to resign, I think like that was very telling for me because I had such strong connections to that school, to that place. So I decided to resign. I went back to my classroom literally that day and I started looking for other positions. I just started looking at like the radius around my house. I knew I didn't want to travel more than 30 minutes and I started looking. I started applying. I very quickly got a new job. I knew an admin in a district that once we started talking, I was very quickly kind of like convinced that that would be my next move. And it was interesting, you know, looking back because it was another co-teaching position. And I had said to myself, leaving my first district, that I wanted self-contained. I wanted to get back to that self-contained world where I had been my first 3 years of teaching, where I knew I could accommodate and modify for my students, doing whatever I needed to do, using whatever curriculum I needed to do to meet my kids' needs. That was my favorite thing to do, figure out what was best for each kid. And sometimes in the general education world, even the co-teaching world, like you can't really do that. You're using the gen ed curriculum, you are following a pacing guide, and you need to stay on a certain track. I was over that. I wanted to get back to self-contained. So I took a third grade co-teaching job in this new district because I knew the admin, because I got like, you know, these good vibes, and I kind of made a very quick decision. Looking back, I think I was in such a headspace of I need to leave where I'm at right now. I need to resign. This is no longer right for me. I need out. I don't think I would have made a different decision because I think something was kind of like handed to me and it like looked very pretty and nice. But I do wish everything happens for a reason. I have no regrets. I should have, looking back, looked at other options. I should have done my due diligence, and I would say this to anyone now who is in this position. Do your due diligence, make pros and cons lists, like all of those things. Don't make quick decisions. I made a quick decision. Everything happens for a reason, and that's what was meant to happen because it led me to where I am now, but I shouldn't have done that. So I made this very quick decision to go to this new district, very small district. It's only made up of 2 schools. I was coming from a very large district of like 11 schools, graduating class of like 750, 800. And I was going to this very, very small district, 1 elementary school, 1 middle school, and they go to a different town for high school. So it was a very different vibe. So to me as a future admin, I was like, this is great. This is such a different perspective for me as a teacher, as a future admin, whatever, to see this completely new type of district and how they do things. I was also promised that, you know, that year I wasn't going to be able to have self-contained. I was going to be doing third grade co-teaching, but the next year I would. So now I was putting off what I wanted for a year to go to this district just because, again, what was being handed to me looked very pretty and nice. I don't recommend, but here we are. So I go to my new district. You know, I'm going to actually pause here because I went back to my story highlights on Instagram and I screenshotted a lot of the like Q&As that you guys had given me when I was resigning. And I think, let me pause here and answer some of the questions that you guys had at that time. So this was back in June 2024 when I left that first district and I was going to the new one that I was just talking about. So one of the questions I got was, I'm wanting to switch districts as well, but major pay differences. What are your thoughts? And I said, in my opinion, happiness over pay, but you also need to be able to live your life. Make sure that you are at least making enough to be able to pay your bills and do the things you love. And I still agree with that answer. Are you resigning to become an admin or just a teacher in another district? So I just answered that. I was resigning to be a teacher in another district. The admin thoughts did cross my mind, but I was not done with teaching. Like I still even feel that way now. I feel like I am not done teaching and like getting every squeeze I can out of being a teacher. to then go to another role. So that's kind of how I was feeling at that time as well. Did your principal know that you were looking to move on? If not, who wrote your letters of rec? So when my principal told me on my birthday that he was going to move my classroom, and I decided, like, no, that's not what I want, I did go to him the next day. And I was like, I just want to be clear. Like, I kind of left that meeting being like, that's not what I want. And I am going to be looking elsewhere. Like, I love you guys. I love this place. And I wish it wasn't like this. But hearing that yesterday kind of gave me that push. And I need to look elsewhere. And he understood. He was so understanding. He wanted bigger and better things for me as well, like to be able to move on and see other things so that I could be a good admin one day. So he understood. Does this mean you're starting over in regards to tenure and you no longer have professional status? So yes, every time I switch districts, I did start over in tenure. Like right now I'm not tenured, but that never mattered to me. I don't want it to ever matter to you. Like, do what is best for your happiness, for your mental health. Please do not worry about being tenure. Like, you need to do what's best for you. Do not stay somewhere because of tenure, please. Did you pack your room prior, and are you going for a specialty position, reading specialist? I said I slowly started bringing my stuff home in the last 2 weeks of school. 9 carloads total. Leaving some things at work since I'm teaching ESY this summer at my current school. And you can see I had like pictures of bringing everything home. I had so much at that school. What reasons did you give on interviews about why you wanted to leave? I said I was honest and I explained that I felt that my time there had come to an end. I wanted a change of scenery, new experiences, and new challenges. The admin at my new district 100% respected that and appreciated my honesty. And I will say, when I applied and interviewed for my current job as well, I was also very honest and open, and they appreciate that. I think there's no reason to hide anything. You know, I was not doing anything wrong. I was doing all of these shifts and moves for my happiness. So congrats on your next chapter. What about your district was missing to know that you were ready to move on? And I said, I'm getting this question a lot. It wasn't necessarily that my district was missing something. I loved my school, my principal, and all of my coworkers, my students, and the families. I'm so beyond sad leaving. I just felt that the past couple of years I was falling out of love with teaching and not in love with what I was doing anymore. Being that teaching is my passion and what I feel I'm best at, it was hard for me to not be happy going to work every day. Lately, I'm really trying to make decisions in my life that are best for my mental health and my happiness, and this was one of them. I could have stayed at my current school another year because I truly love everyone there, but I didn't feel like being complacent anymore, and I wanted to push myself out of my comfort zone so that I could hopefully get my love for teaching back. I know that this won't make sense to everybody, and it's a really personal thing, so it's hard to explain, but that's the best way I can describe it. And then I said, P.S. to be a great principal one day, I really should work in other districts and other environments. How did you know that this school was the right fit after having those feelings about teaching? So how did I know that my new school was going to be the best fit? And it's interesting looking back at these things. I said, I don't know if I know that for sure. I don't think that that's possible with any place or decision, but I did apply to multiple places and I weighed my pros and cons. I also went through all of this with my therapist, my friends, and my family. In the end, this district had a lot of pros than the other ones, and I just had a gut feeling. And I said at the end, what's the worst case? I don't stay for a lot of years. That's okay, and I'm okay with that, which is crazy because I ended up only staying for a couple of months. So that's all the questions I got from when I resigned from my first district. Also, I resigned in June. So you, at least in New Jersey, have to give 60 days, 60 calendar days. And because it was going to be over the summer, like, I didn't have to give any extra time, if that makes sense. Like, the time just ran out in the summer. I also happened to be working ESY that summer, but didn't matter. Like, I wasn't going to have to still work there in September. I was going to be able to start in my new district. So then I started in my new district. I started as a third grade co-teacher, as I was saying. Again, I did not want to have to co-teach again. I was going into someone else's classroom again, someone that had taught by herself for a lot of years. She didn't necessarily want a co-teacher. She was just assigned a co-teacher. So now, again, I'm working with someone that I'm going to have to like make a lot of compromises with, and we're going to have this arranged marriage where we have all these kids and make all these decisions together. And look, truthfully, like neither of us really wanted to. I wanted to be in the self-contained world. She didn't want to be co-teaching, and it just made it hard. She was so nice, and to this day I can only say nice things about her. She's one of the best teachers I've ever witnessed. But just to be frank, like we didn't want to be in that setup, and there we were. So I think that made it hard, and I think it made my first couple weeks and months being assigned that job and like planning with her very hard, and a lot of compromises. There were a lot of compromises, a lot of me kind of like being more quiet and accepting certain things, and that was hard for me. Like I had just gone through 4 years of a lot of compromise and communication, and I had told myself that I'm leaving, I don't want to do that anymore, and then here I was doing that. I think that all of that combined with just the environment, the admin, and a lot of other things in general, just it was not a right fit for me. I will not, and I will never get into too many details, but it was just not a right fit for me. And I started to feel that really early on. I was not happy. From September for like the next couple of months, I was like not even reaching out to my friends and seeing my friends. I was very like just to myself. I just found myself kind of in this depressive state that I hadn't been in a long time, and it was not comfortable. I just knew something was not right. And if I had just left this place of 7 years where I really was happy, but I left to be even more happy and more fulfilled, and now I wasn't, I knew something was not right. And I think it was my Friendsgiving party at my house. I hadn't hosted, I hadn't had my friends over in so long, and I finally had my friends over for Friendsgiving. And before anyone even got there, I was just hysterically crying to one of my friends. And I said, I think I need to resign. Like something is not right. I knew I had been feeling it for a long time, for weeks, for months. But to leave a job in the middle of the year was never on my bingo card for my life. I am like, I think the most dedicated teacher. Like I love teaching. It is my whole world, it is my whole life. I love the kids. I love everything about it. To leave in the middle of the year, to me, it felt like a failure. It felt like I was letting people down. It felt like I was doing something wrong. And it just like overall just felt like yucky. It felt really, really yucky. And I think that's why I couldn't decide sooner than the end of November to do it. So I finally in November decided that I had no choice. Like I really, really for years had been trying to make better decisions for my mental health and for myself and not for other people. And it just all came to a head, and I was like, I have to. I have to leave mid-year. One of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make. Leaving a school after 7 years was very hard. So was this. Just leaving after a couple months. It was the middle of the year. I went in that week. I told my co-teacher that I had to do it. I went to my principal, who was very nice and supportive. I told her. I wrote up my resignation letter, and I showed it to both of them, and I submitted it. That was for sure a hard time. I also knew I was going to have to give 60 days, which added on to how hard this was, because now I'm leaving. I'm saying I'm leaving. I'm telling everyone I'm leaving. I know that's what's best for me, but now I have to stay here for a few months. So I resigned the end of November, I believe, somewhere at the end of November, and I had to stay until January 17th. So it's 60 calendar days. Luckily, we had like winter break in there. I think like Thanksgiving break was in there. So it wasn't horrible, but it was hard. It's definitely hard to have everyone know you are up and leaving a place, but have to still be there. Luckily and strangely enough, everyone at the school was very supportive and kind of told me like I was doing what was best for me, and, that I was making the right call. So that was awesome. And it didn't make it like awkward or weird. I just think for me, it was hard. Like and then eventually having to tell the kids. We waited until like really close to when I was leaving to tell them. I worked my butt off to prepare and prep everything for when I left. I did not want to leave whoever was stepping into that role. I did not want to leave them empty-handed. But that was a really hard decision. I also have story highlights about that move and leaving mid-year. So I screenshotted a couple questions I had gotten way back when. And also, if you want to like hear more in depth in these stories, I do have those story highlights. When I left my first district, I called the story highlight resigning. And then when I left this district mid-year, I called those story highlights job switch and job switch 2. So those are all on my Instagram if you would like to go back. But I did screenshot a couple of the questions I was getting. So someone asked why I had to give 60 days. I think I just kind of explained it's part of the contract. Every district I've been in, that is just the protocol. If they find someone before those 60 days and can get them in, then sure, like you can go. But a lot of times, especially mid-year, you have to give those 60 days. What about all the stuff that you brought into the classroom? So luckily in that 3rd grade co-teaching classroom, she had a lot of the setup. I really just had like where my table was and like kind of like the drawers and stuff behind me. So I just emptied it out that last week of working there and brought it home. How did you know that the job that you started in September wasn't what was right for you? And I kind of just explained that. I think from the beginning of getting that job, I compromised. I wanted self-contained. I compromised and did co-teaching and said I would do it for a year. Then I was with a co-teacher where I constantly had to compromise and give up what I wanted to do. And then even when we got in our groove and all of those compromises were okay with me, it was just something about that place. It was not a best fit for me. And I said this on my interviews, and this is always how I'll describe it. Just like our students have a best fit classroom and sometimes a best fit environment for them, teachers do too. We are still human. We do not just fit and belong in every place at every time, in every setting. We also have what's best for us. So that place was not what was best for me. Did you return to your old district? No, I was never going to go back to my original district. Again, I loved that place forever and ever and ever. I still talk to a lot of people from there. I just never wanted to go backwards. I was always trying to push myself and move on to what was next for me. And I still had that in the back of my head that it's best for me to see other places to be a better teacher and a better future admin. Okay. So that was all the questions about leaving that district. So I was leaving mid-year. I was so not happy and so in a bad place that I actually resigned before getting a new job. I spoke to my family about it. I spoke to my mom about it. And I was like, if I have to come back and live at home, like if I don't get a job, like I need to leave this place. Like that's truly how down bad I was. And for my mental health, I just had to resign. I needed those 60 days to start so that I could leave as quick as possible. And I had to hope that within those 60 calendar days, I was able to find another job. So then the job search started. I started applying, interviewing, and demo lessoning everywhere. And this time I was not going to make a quick decision. I made a quick decision last time. I was not going to do that. I had the spreadsheets. I had the pros and cons list. I was talking to my therapist about it. I was doing all of my due diligence to make sure that I was going to end up in a place that I would not have to leave again. And again, like, what's the worst case? I'm not there for many, many years. I only stay for a few, but I did not want to even have that in my head that leaving mid-year or leaving soon was a possibility. I wanted to find my new home. I wanted to find my love for teaching again. At this point, I truly had lost it and I wanted to get it back. So I can talk about interviewing and demo lessoning in another episode, but I did interviews and demo lessons. Either I took half days or I did it on my lunch or my prep from my car. I did some Zoom interviews. I took half days to go do demo lessons or in-person interviews. And I ended up getting a job in the town where I live. So I have my own house, and I, at the time, had lived here for like 2 years. And I was always driving to work, a good like 20 minutes in my first district, or where I had been for that half a year, I was driving 30 minutes, and it was very draining. I know people drive a lot more than that, and good for you. But for me, that drive was not it. So I needed to have a commute that was shorter than 30 minutes for sure. And then when I had the opportunity to have a 5-minute commute, not even, I was very excited about it. It definitely went on a pros list when I was making my pros and cons list. And I wanted to get back into the self-contained world. So I was interviewing for a lot of like LLD classrooms, which is learning and language disabled, or ERI, which is where I am right now, emotional regulation impairment. And both of these types of classrooms are self-contained. I was going to be able to really teach to each individual student, accommodate and modify how I felt necessary. I was going to have teaching assistants and kind of get back into that world where I was my first few years of teaching. So I took the job in my current district, and I became a 3rd and 4th grade ERI teacher. And I almost didn't take the job because of the 3rd and 4th grade aspect of it. I was definitely intimidated by the older grades. I had never taught anything above 2nd. I felt intimidated by like the fact that it's a testing grade. The work is harder. My students in ERI were going to be on or above grade level. That is like the typical profile of an ERI student. Their IQ is very high. They are cognitively on or above, and they really struggle with their behaviors. So the thought of teaching academically 3rd and 4th grade was very intimidating for me. But again, after weighing the pros and cons of those last couple places I was looking at, this was where I was going to land. I had just good feelings about a lot of parts of it, and I knew I did not want to be stagnant anymore, and I wanted a challenge, and teaching 3rd and 4th grade was going to be a challenge. So I took it. So I became a 3rd and 4th grade ERI teacher. I taught that from January 21st of last year to the end of the year. And towards the end of the school year, we found out that the K2 ERI teacher was resigning. She was going to go work in her home district, which she wanted and was very exciting for her. And the opportunity came for me to do the K2 class, which kind of brought together everything that I wanted. I wanted to get back to the K2 world. I know that material and that world best. I wanted to stay in that school. I wanted to stay in ERI. I wanted to stay in self-contained, but now I got to do it in the K2 room. So yeah, I've been doing ERI for a year and a couple of months. In September, I started the K2 room. I also did the K2 room for ESY this past summer. And yeah, it's been amazing. I work with the best people in my classroom. I have the best teaching assistants that have ever walked this planet, and we work really well as a team together. We have the cutest students in the whole school, I think. And I love my job. I love teaching my kids emotional regulation. I love teaching them how to have better behaviors, and how to do better, and how to be the best versions of themselves. I love being back in the K2 academic world. That's easier for me. 3-4 academics, I give those teachers a lot of credit. It is no joke. The kids used to teach me last year like how to do some things. It's very hard. But anyway, I'm loving the K2 ERI world. And yeah, that's how I am where I am right now. I think I screenshotted a couple more questions. Oh, about how, yeah, so I almost didn't take the job because it was 3-4, but I weighed the pros and cons. How did you find time outside of your current job to interview or do demo lessons? I told you I did that from the car, or I had to take half days. Are you at all worried why this position is available mid-year? So when I went to the 3-4 ERI classroom, that teacher was leaving mid-year. So I got a lot of questions like, well, are you worried? Like, if she left, like, what's the vibe there? And I said, no, from what I've learned this year. And like I keep saying, not every school/district is a fit for every teacher. From the DMs and responses I am seeing from all of you, I am seeing that that is definitely true. I believe it was her first year in that position, like it was in mine this year. So maybe we both weren't in the right spot. And this is what was meant to happen. Everything happens for a reason, right? Also, I had to go off of how I felt. I felt a great connection with the admin at the school and the type of class, etc. Then I got a lot of questions about like, what does a demo lesson look like in that type of classroom, whatever. And I can definitely go into interview and demo lessons in another episode. I am now way over the time I wanted to talk about this, so I am not going to do that now. And then I got a lot of comments like self-contained is the best. And I was like, I know, I want to go back to it so bad. I was so excited to go back to self-contained. Is it your goal to be in this position long term? Of course, that is always the goal. But again, like whatever is best for me, whatever is meant to happen will happen. Everything happens for a reason. So now I'm at where I'm at. I am so overwhelmed going through this whole story. It makes me very emotional. I think looking back, you know, there were so many highs and lows in the past 9 years of like this journey and going from school to school or co-teacher to co-teacher, admin to admin, whatever it was. And, you know, you make these connections and you work with these people. And then when you leave, like, it's a lot. It's a lot. I think in summary, like I will wrap this up by saying, always do what is best for you. Over the past, I guess it's been 2 years of making all of these changes, I've gotten so many DMs and talked to so many of you that have gone through similar situations or are thinking about going through similar situations. And I can't help but always respond by saying, do what is best for you. Of course, you're going to feel bad or you're going to feel a certain way towards the people you're leaving or whatever. You have to think about yourself. You have to be selfish. We are so selfless in this job. And you have to think about yourself also. You have to. You do not need to stay in the same place for 25 years. And if you've done that, great. But you do not have to do that. You need to worry about yourself. You need to be happy. You need to be fulfilled. You know, we work our butts off in these jobs, in these positions for these kids, for our coworkers, for the community. We work so hard as teachers. We have to be happy too. We have to go to work and be happy. So think about that. If you are thinking about making a shift, or if you have made a shift, I hope that you feel validated by this. I hope that this episode was helpful to just kind of talk about my journey. I definitely can revisit this at another time. I hope you all have a fantastic day, and I will catch you on the next episode.